The bells above Morning Brew Café jingled when I pushed through the glass door that Tuesday morning. Burnt coffee hit my nose first, then something sour from the kitchen. All wrong. Then I saw her. My daughter Patricia on her knees in the bathroom doorway, door propped open for the whole world to see, scrubbing tile grout with a toothbrush. Her face was red, wet. She wiped at her eyes with the back of one hand, kept scrubbing with the other. "Patricia, you missed a spot. Again." The voice came from behind the counter, sharp, sweet as artificial sweetener. A woman in her early 60s sat at the register like it was a throne. Silver hair perfectly styled, designer glasses on a gold chain. Dorothy Foster, my daughter's mother-in-law, sitting in the cafe I bought for Patricia just 3 months ago with every penny of my retirement savings. My name is Wesley Patterson. I'm 62 years old, and I just watched my life's work being used to humiliate my only daughter. Patricia's head jerked up when she heard the bells. Our eyes met across the small space. Hers went wide with panic, like a child caught doing something shameful. "Dad. Wesley." Dorothy's smile could have sold insurance to a dead man. What a lovely surprise. "We weren't expecting you until Thursday." "We?" My jaw tightened as I stepped further into what should have been Patricia's domain. "I came to see my daughter." I walked toward her, fighting every instinct that told me to grab that toothbrush from her hands. "And her cafe." "Our cafe, dear." Dorothy tilted her head with practiced sympathy. "Patricia and I are partners now. Didn't she tell you?" The toothbrush clattered to the tile floor as Patricia scrambled to her feet. "Hi, Dad. Sorry, I'm just finishing something in here." Her voice cracked on the last word, and I watched her swipe quickly at her cheek with the back of her wrist. "Partners." The word sat in my chest like a piece of spoiled meat. I'd spent 35 years as a health inspector for the state of Oregon. I knew when something was rotting from the inside out. Gerald Foster sat hunched over his laptop in the corner booth, my daughter's husband and Dorothy's only son. His shoulders tensed when I looked his way, but he kept his eyes glued to his screen, fingers typing nothing. One customer occupied the window table, an elderly woman who stared into her coffee cup like it might reveal the secrets of the universe. "Let me help you, honey." I reached toward the cleaning supplies scattered around Patricia's feet. "Oh no." Dorothy rose from her perch with theatrical grace, smoothing down her cream-colored skirt. "She needs to understand proper cleaning standards." The health inspector was very clear about our deficiencies last month. My hand froze mid-reach. "What health inspector?" Dorothy waved one manicured hand dismissively. "Just routine bureaucracy. Patricia had a few oversights in her record-keeping. We've corrected everything, of course." Her smile widened to show perfect teeth. "Oh, you'd understand better than most, wouldn't you? Given your former profession." The espresso machine behind the counter released a violent hiss of steam. I counted to 5 in my head the way I used to when dealing with restaurant owners who thought charm could substitute for compliance. "Gerald." I turned toward the corner table, keeping my voice level. "How's the new job treating you?" He glanced up for maybe half a second. "Fine, Dad. Just busy with some client work." "He's been such a tremendous help here," Dorothy answered before Gerald could say more. "Managing our finances, negotiating with suppliers, handling all the serious business operations. Someone needs to focus on the big picture." "I can handle the business side just fine," Patricia started, but Dorothy cut her off with a laugh that sounded like wind chimes in a tornado. "Sweetheart, we've discussed this. You should stick to what you're naturally good at." The honey in Dorothy's voice could have caused diabetes. "The baking, the customer service. Leave the complicated decisions to people who understand money." Patricia's hands curled into fists at her sides. She grabbed a damp rag from the counter and moved to the nearest table, wiping it in rapid, angry circles that left streaks across the surface. I needed coffee, needed a minute to process what I was seeing. More than that, I needed to understand exactly how my $85,000 investment had turned my confident daughter into someone who scrubbed bathroom floors while her mother-in-law held court. "Could I get a coffee?" I asked Dorothy, not Patricia. Had to. The power dynamic in this room was crystal clear, and testing it would only make things worse for my daughter. Dorothy poured with the precision of someone performing surgery, her movements deliberate and showy. "Tell me what you think of our new blend." "I've made significant improvements to the sourcing." "Our blend." "Our improvements." Every possessive pronoun felt like a small knife being twisted. The coffee was weak, bitter, served at the wrong temperature. In my inspector days, I would have written this place up for temperature violations alone. Instead, I forced my face into a neutral expression. Delicious, I lied, and watched Dorothy's eyes track the slight tremor in my hand as I lifted the cup. The woman at the window table stood abruptly, leaving her coffee half-finished and a dollar tip that Dorothy swept into her apron pocket before Patricia could reach it. "Well," I said, setting down the cup with deliberate care, "I should let you ladies get back to your important work." "Oh, we're always working," Dorothy beamed. "Running a successful business requires constant attention to every detail. But that's what families do, isn't it? We support each other through thick and thin." I looked at Patricia, still wiping the same table in increasingly frantic circles. "Right," I said. The bells jangled gentler when I left, or maybe my ears were ringing too loudly to tell the difference. The drive home took 20 minutes through Portland's afternoon traffic, but my mind was racing faster than the cars around me. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to leave marks. Every few blocks I caught myself shaking my head, trying to dislodge the image of Patricia on her knees, tears mixing with cleaning solution. When I pulled into my apartment complex, I sat in the parking spot for another 10 minutes, engine off, just breathing. 35 years of inspecting restaurants had taught me to recognize toxic situations. This wasn't just bad management, this was systematic humiliation. My apartment felt smaller when I walked in. The silence pressed against my ears. I'd lived alone since my wife Margaret passed 8 years ago, but tonight the quiet felt oppressive. I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey, then put the bottle away. I needed to think clearly. The partnership documents sat in my filing cabinet where I'd stored them after Patricia first showed them to me 2 months ago. At the time, they'd seemed standard. Boring legal language about profit sharing and operational responsibilities. I pulled them out now with different eyes that had just watched Dorothy pocket a customer's tip while my daughter scrubbed toilets. Page 1 looked normal enough. Standard partnership agreement language. Page 3 made my stomach tighten. Page 7 stopped me cold. Dorothy Foster owned 51% of Morning Brew Café. 51% of the business I'd bought with my entire retirement savings. 51% of my daughter's dream. I read it again to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The language was clear, legal, and absolutely devastating. Patricia had somehow signed away controlling interest in her own business. Around 7 p.m., my doorbell rang. Patricia stood in my hallway wearing the same stained apron from the cafe, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. She didn't say anything, just walked past me into my living room and collapsed onto the couch, pulling her knees to her chest like she was trying to disappear. "I told her I was picking up supplies from the restaurant depot," she whispered, staring at my coffee table. "That's the only reason she let me leave." I sat down beside her, close enough to offer comfort, but far enough away to give her space. We'd always been able to sit together in silence, even when she was little. Tonight felt different, heavier. "Dad, I'm so sorry." The words came out in a rush, followed by tears that had probably been building for months. "I didn't want you to know how bad it got. I was ashamed." "Ashamed of what, honey?" She made it sound so generous at first. Patricia's voice was barely audible, said she wanted to help with the startup costs, that it was a family investment. Gerald kept saying how lucky I was to have a mother-in-law who cared so much about my success. My chest felt tight, like someone was slowly tightening a vice around my ribs. "Tell me about the papers you signed." She reached into her purse with shaking hands and pulled out a manila folder. There was so much legal language. Pages and pages of contracts and agreements. Gerald said it was normal business protection stuff. He promised it was just to make sure everyone's interests were covered fairly. I opened the folder and spread the documents across my coffee table. Partnership agreements, LLC filings, financial responsibility clauses. Most of it looked standard, the kind of paperwork any small business might need. But buried in the middle, in language so dense it would take a lawyer to parse it properly, was the real poison. Dorothy Foster didn't just own 51% of the cafe. She had complete operational control, hiring and firing authority, the right to make all major business decisions without Patricia's input. Patricia had essentially signed herself into an unpaid management position in her own business. The lawyer said. Patricia started, then stopped. I can't forget what the lawyer said when I tried to ask questions. What lawyer? Dorothy's lawyer. He said I was lucky to have such a generous business partner, and that questioning the details might give the impression that I wasn't serious about making the partnership work. She looked up at me for the first time since arriving. "Dad, what kind of daughter am I that I let this happen to your money?" Something cold and sharp settled in my stomach. Not anger exactly. Purpose. The same feeling I used to get when I walked into a restaurant kitchen and found evidence of serious health code violations. The moment when documentation became action. "Look at me, Patricia." She did. I spent 35 years shutting down establishments that broke the rules and hurt people. I took her hands in mine, surprised by how cold they were. "This isn't your fault. This is fraud, and I'm going to fix it. Dad, she has money, connections, and I know how to fight people who think rules don't apply to them." I squeezed her hands gently. "Trust me on this one." She left around 10 p.m., sneaking back to her house like a teenager breaking curfew. After she was gone, I sat in my living room with those partnership documents spread across every available surface. 51 pages of legal theft, dressed up in professional language and notary stamps. My eyes drifted to the bookshelf behind my chair. Between my collection of vintage health department manuals and a photo of Margaret at our 20th anniversary sat a small leather badge wallet I hadn't opened in 3 years. Senior Health Inspector, Oregon Department of Health, Wesley Patterson. I ran my thumb over the embossed state seal, feeling the raised edges of the metal badge inside. 35 years of closing down restaurants that thought they were too smart for the rules. A smile spread across my face. Not a nice smile. The kind of smile that had made dishonest restaurant owners very nervous. Dorothy Foster was about to learn what happens when you steal from the wrong man's daughter. The badge sat on my nightstand when I woke the next morning. Old habits die hard. 6 a.m. sharp, same as every day for the past 35 years. I showered and dressed carefully. Khakis, button-down shirt, comfortable walking shoes. Inspector Casual, Margaret used to call it. Muscle memory is a funny thing. I hadn't worn this exact combination since my retirement party 3 years ago, but my hands reached for these clothes automatically. Looking in the bathroom mirror, I saw someone different from yesterday's shocked father. This man had a plan. Morning Brew opened at 7 a.m. I arrived at 7:30, giving Patricia time to get settled into her morning routine. The early crowd was small, 3 customers scattered across separate tables, each absorbed in their phones or newspapers. Patricia stood behind the counter alone, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd slept about as well as I had. She startled when the door chimes announced my arrival. "Dad, what are you doing here so early? Black coffee, please," I said loudly enough for the other customers to hear. "And one of those cinnamon rolls if you've got them fresh." Her eyes flickered with understanding. We were playing normal customer and business owner. Of course, 1 coffee and a fresh cinnamon roll coming right up. I took the corner table with the best view of the entire operation and unfolded my copy of the Oregonian. 35 years of restaurant inspections had taught me to see establishments the way a carpenter sees load-bearing walls, automatically, unavoidably. The refrigerator door hung open while Patricia retrieved milk. 20 seconds. 30. Temperature abuse of dairy products. When she finally closed it, I noticed no thermometer on the exterior, which was required for proper temperature monitoring. She set dairy containers on the prep counter, directly adjacent to where vegetables had been chopped earlier. Cross-contamination risk. The containers showed no date labels indicating when they'd been opened. Violation of Oregon Administrative Rule 333-150-000. Patricia's cell phone sat on the food preparation surface. Direct contamination vector. In 10 minutes of casual observation, I'd identified 5 citable health code violations. Not major infractions that would shut down a restaurant, but significant enough to trigger a formal inspection if reported properly. My coffee arrived, accompanied by a cinnamon roll that was actually quite good. "Thank you, honey. This hits the spot." She hurried back to her prep work, and I continued my assessment. The hand-washing station near the kitchen pass-through had a visible crack in the basin. The chemical storage area had cleaning supplies stored on the same shelf as dry goods. Small violations individually, but they painted a picture of an establishment cutting corners on basic safety protocols. Wesley Patterson. Becoming a regular customer already, I see. Dorothy's voice cut through my concentration like fingernails on a chalkboard. She emerged from the back office wearing a fresh outfit, navy blazer, pearl necklace, makeup applied with professional precision. She pulled out the chair across from me without invitation. The early bird catches the worm, as they say. Plus, I told Patricia that good coffee sells itself, and I was right. The operation does seem different since my last visit, I observed, taking a deliberate sip of coffee that was still too weak and served at the wrong temperature. New efficiency systems in place? Oh, absolutely. Dorothy leaned forward with the enthusiasm of someone discussing their favorite hobby. I've implemented several cost-saving measures since joining as Patricia's business partner. Reduced waste through better inventory control, optimized supplier relationships, streamlined daily operations. Smart business thinking. Thank you. Gerald and I have been conducting a comprehensive review of every expense category. He has such a natural head for financial analysis. Gerald chose that moment to arrive, nodding vaguely in my direction before settling into his usual corner table. Headphones went on before his laptop even finished booting up. The morning rush began in earnest around 8:15. 3 customers became 6, then 8. Patricia moved efficiently between the counter and tables, taking orders, preparing drinks, wiping surfaces. Dorothy remained planted at the register, directing traffic and counting money. No, 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 Dorothy's voice suddenly sharp, cutting across the cafe's morning buzz. She strode over to where Patricia was wiping down a table near the window. Circular motions, remember? Watch carefully. Dorothy took the cleaning cloth from Patricia's hands and demonstrated the proper technique with exaggerated patience, like a kindergarten teacher showing a slow student how to color inside the lines. See? Smooth, even circles. No streaks. It's really not that complicated if you pay attention. I was doing circular motions, Patricia said quietly. Were you? Because Mrs. Henderson mentioned yesterday that several tables looked streaky when she was here with her book club. 3 different tables. Do you have any idea what that kind of detail does to our reputation in the community? 2 customers at nearby tables shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Gerald glanced up from his laptop for exactly 2 seconds, then returned to his screen as if nothing was happening. In 35 years of restaurant inspections, I had never once written a violation for improper table wiping technique. Know why? Because the health department doesn't regulate the direction of cleaning motions. Circular versus linear wiping has 0 impact on food safety or public health. But this wasn't about cleanliness standards. This was about control. Dorothy was establishing dominance in front of customers, using Patricia's work performance as a vehicle for public humiliation. Excuse me, I stood up. Could I use your restroom? Of course, Dorothy beamed, her customer service smile snapping back into place. Down the hall past the kitchen. We maintain very high cleanliness standards throughout the facility. I'm sure someone with your professional background would appreciate attention to detail. The walk to the restroom took me directly past the kitchen pass-through window, giving me an unobstructed view of the food preparation area. More violations. Chemical storage bottles sitting directly next to food ingredients. The mop sink positioned too close to the hand-washing station. Temperature logs that appeared to be several days behind on entries. I took 5 quick photos with my phone, being careful to keep the camera inconspicuous. The restroom itself was spotless, clearly Patricia's handiwork. But the hand-washing sink had that crack in the basin I'd noticed earlier, and the soap dispenser was empty. Minor violations, but citable under current health department standards. 4 more photos for my growing documentation file. When I returned from the restroom, Dorothy had taken my seat. Not just moved to my table, she was sitting in my exact chair reading my newspaper like she owned the place, which, according to those partnership documents, she essentially did. You know what section I read religiously every morning? She asked without looking up. Business and finance. Understanding market trends is absolutely crucial for entrepreneurial success. Most small business owners fail because they don't study the fundamentals. I'm sure that's true, I said, standing beside my own table like a guest in someone else's home. Patricia never looks at the business section. Sweet girl, but no natural instinct for commerce. She's much better suited to the creative side, baking, decorating, customer interaction, the warm, personal touches that make a cafe feel welcoming. I pulled out my wallet and left a $20 bill on the table. The coffee and cinnamon roll couldn't have cost more than $7, but I wanted to see what would happen. Keep the change, Patricia, I called toward the counter. Dorothy's hand shot out like a striking snake, snatching the 20 before Patricia could take a step. How generous of you, Wesley. We'll put this toward the new espresso machine repairs. The current one has been giving us trouble all week." Patricia stood behind the counter, watching her tip disappear into Dorothy's pocket. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not just sadness or frustration, anger. Good. Anger was useful. I left without saying goodbye, but made sure to smile at Dorothy as I walked past, let her think she was winning. Back home, I spread my documentation across the kitchen table like a general planning a campaign. Photographs of health code violations, notes on operational deficiencies, observations about employee treatment. Individually, these were minor infractions. Together, they painted a picture of an establishment that had serious management problems. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Oregon Health Authority website. The complaint form was right there in the public portal, designed for concerned citizens to report food safety issues. I'd seen thousands of these complaints during my career. Most were frivolous, personal vendettas disguised as public health concerns. But some were legitimate, and those got immediate attention. The trick was knowing exactly what language to use. "Multiple food safety violations observed during recent visit," I typed. "Cross-contamination risks involving dairy products and fresh produce. Temperature control failures with potentially hazardous foods. Chemical storage violations near food preparation areas. Improper hand-washing facilities creating public health risk for vulnerable populations, including elderly customers and families with young children." Those last two phrases were magic words in the health department. Vulnerable populations and public health risk automatically bumped any complaint from routine follow-up to priority investigation. I'd written 3,000 inspection reports in my career. This one felt different, personal, better. Before submitting, I called Patricia. She answered on the first ring. "Dad, are you alone right now?" A pause. "Gerald's at his mother's place. They're having dinner." "Good. Listen carefully. Tomorrow evening when you close the cafe, I need you to forget a few routine tasks. Those dairy products in the cooler. Don't update the date labels when you normally would. The temperature log by the walk-in freezer. Maybe you're too tired to fill it in completely." Long silence. Then, "Dad, you're setting her up. I'm letting the truth show itself. She's already cutting corners and violating basic safety protocols. I'm just making sure those violations are visible when the right people come looking." "When will that happen?" "Day after tomorrow. Mid-morning. You'll know when they arrive." "Will you be there?" "No. I can't be anywhere near the cafe when this happens." "But Patricia?" I kept my voice gentle. "This is going to fix everything. Trust me." After we hung up, I stared at the completed complaint form on my laptop screen. My finger hovered over the submit button. Once I clicked this, there would be no going back. I'd be using 35 years of professional expertise to target my daughter's business. But Dorothy had created these violations. Dorothy had endangered customers by cutting corners and ignoring basic safety standards. Dorothy had stolen my daughter's dream and turned it into a nightmare of public humiliation. I clicked submit. The confirmation email arrived instantly. "Your complaint has been received and assigned reference number 2025 PDX 1847. A health department representative will investigate within 48 to 72 hours. Stage 1 was in motion." That evening, I called my old colleague, Howard Sullivan. We'd trained together 40 years ago, worked together on hundreds of inspections, and closed down the infamous Morrison Street Bistro scandal in less than 6 hours flat. If anyone would understand what needed to happen, it was Howard. He picked up on the third ring. "Wesley Patterson, 3 years retired and suddenly calling about work stuff. What's the occasion? Can't an old friend check in? You never checked in once in 3 years. Spill it. Who's causing trouble?" Hypothetically, I leaned back in my chair. Small cafe operation. Multiple OAR 3T3 violations. Temperature control issues, cross-contamination risks, improper chemical storage. Owner seems to think regulations are suggestions. Hypothetically, his tone shifted to professional mode. That's minimum 3 citable offenses. How bad are we talking? Bad enough. But the owner's confident, thinks rules don't apply to family businesses. Oh, those are always my favorite cases. Howard's laugh had an edge to it. The confident ones who think charm beats compliance. We talked for another hour about the old days, mutual colleagues, changes in department procedures. Finally, Howard got to the point. Wesley, someone's about to get a comprehensive education in Oregon Health Code enforcement. Hope they're ready to learn. After hanging up, I sat in my apartment listening to Portland's evening rain against the windows. 48 hours until Dorothy Foster discovered what 3 decades of health inspection experience looked like when focused on her operation. My phone buzzed with a Google notification. Someone had left a new review for Morning Brew. I opened it expecting routine customer feedback. Instead, I found opportunity. The Google reviews page for Morning Brew showed 43 reviews with an average of 4.2 stars. Most were positive comments about Patricia's baking and the cozy atmosphere. A few complaints about slow service during busy periods. Nothing about sanitation or management issues. Time to change that narrative. I created a new Google account using a random name generator. Philip Henderson, apparently the 47th most common male name combination in America. Perfect for blending into the background. I found a stock photo of a generic middle-aged man in a blue shirt, slight smile, the kind of face you'd forget 10 minutes after meeting him. Philip Henderson, concerned citizen and complete fiction. The review wrote itself. 1 star. Professional tone, specific concerns, disappointed by apparent lack of attention to sanitation standards during recent visit. Observed several concerning practices regarding food safety protocols. Hope management takes these issues seriously before someone gets sick. I posted it at 11:47 p.m., then closed my laptop with satisfaction. 2 strategic strikes in 1 day. An official health department complaint and public criticism that would start people asking questions. 35 years of filing inspection reports, and I'd never enjoyed the process this much. My phone chimed with an incoming video call. Kenneth's face appeared on the screen, Berlin apartment visible behind him. My son had inherited his mother's sharp eyes and my stubborn streak. Even from 5,000 miles away, he could read my mood. Dad, you look different tonight. Focused. What's happening with Patricia's situation? I'm taking care of some problems that needed addressing. The mother-in-law issue you mentioned last week. Dorothy Foster is about to learn that stealing from the wrong family has consequences. I explained the health code violations, the partnership fraud, what I'd witnessed at the cafe that morning. Kenneth leaned closer to his camera. Dad, this sounds serious. Are you sure you want to handle this yourself? Maybe Patricia needs a lawyer, not a health inspection. She needs both. But first, Dorothy needs to understand that her business practices have real-world consequences. And you're the one to teach her that lesson? I spent 35 years shutting down establishments that endangered public health. This isn't revenge, Kenneth. This is professional responsibility. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, Dad, I'm transferring $5,000 to your account tomorrow morning. Don't argue with me about it. You spent your retirement savings on Patricia's dream, and now you're fighting to protect it. Let me help. My throat tightened. You're a good son. I learned from a good father. Now go save your daughter's business. After we hung up, I sat in the dark thinking about family loyalty and the lengths we go to protect the people we love. Margaret would have understood. She'd always said that being right wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to be willing to fight for what was right. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had replied to my Philip Henderson review, Dorothy Foster using Morning Brew's verified business account. Her response was public, visible to anyone who looked up the cafe online. We take all customer feedback very seriously and would welcome the opportunity to discuss your concerns directly. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Morning Brew prides itself on exceeding all health and safety standards. Professional language, appropriate business response. But underneath the polite words was a clear message. I'm watching. I see you. I will find you. I should have felt worried. Instead, I smiled in the darkness of my living room. Let her waste time and energy hunting for the non-existent Philip Henderson. Let her question every customer, analyze every interaction. Drive herself crazy trying to identify which visitor had posted that review. The more paranoid she became, the more likely she was to make mistakes. And I had bigger problems lined up for her. Problems with badges and clipboards and the full authority of Oregon's health department behind them. The next 2 days crawled by like wounded animals. I cleaned my apartment twice, reorganized my collection of vintage health department manuals, called Kenneth just to hear his voice. anything to burn time while waiting for the inspection team to arrive. The morning of the scheduled inspection, I woke at 5 a.m. Decades of early morning restaurant visits had programmed my internal clock beyond repair. By 9:30, I'd broken Howard's explicit instructions about staying away from the scene. Their cafe sat directly across Morrison Street from Morning Brew, with large windows that provided a perfect view of both establishments. I ordered a cappuccino and claimed the corner table, spreading out my newspaper like any other retired gentleman enjoying his morning coffee. "Interesting question," I said to the young barista. "What temperature do you keep your milk at?" She laughed. "That's random. 40 degrees exactly. My manager checks the thermometer like 5 times a day. She's obsessed with food safety protocols. Smart manager. You can never be too careful." The cappuccino was perfect. Properly steamed milk heated to exactly 150 degrees. I'd bet money on it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I sat drinking expertly prepared coffee while waiting to watch Morning Brew get written up for temperature violations. At exactly 10 a.m., a white Oregon Health Authority sedan pulled up outside Morning Brew. 2 inspectors emerged. I recognized Martinez from training seminars, competent, thorough, no tolerance for shortcuts. The man with her carried a digital thermometer clipped to his belt and moved with the systematic precision that marked him as someone who took his job seriously. Through Morning Brew's front windows, I watched Dorothy's expression transform from welcoming confusion to growing concern. Martinez showed her badge and spoke words I'd delivered thousands of times. "Oregon Health Authority. We're here to conduct a routine food safety inspection." Dorothy's smile grew brighter, more forced. She thought this was standard procedure, maybe even good publicity. Martinez didn't smile back. Professionals never do during inspections. The second inspector headed straight for the kitchen while Martinez began her systematic examination of the front counter area. Dorothy's hand fluttered up in a gesture that said, "Let me show you around." But professionals don't let business owners control the inspection route. Standard procedure. Never give the establishment time to hide problems. I took another sip of perfectly prepared cappuccino and watched justice unfold through 2 sets of windows. Martinez opened containers, checked temperatures, examined date labels with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this thousands of times. Every few minutes, she'd make notes on her clipboard. Even from across the street, I could see Dorothy's smile becoming more strained with each annotation. Patricia stood frozen by the espresso machine, like a deer caught in headlights. Gerald sat in his corner booth, laptop open, headphones firmly in place, performing his usual impression of someone who existed in a completely different universe from the rest of the cafe. 40 minutes into the inspection, both officials emerged from the kitchen area. The inspector's face was professionally neutral, but Dorothy had gone pale. She was talking rapidly now, gesturing toward Patricia, toward the kitchen, toward the inspection report that Martinez held in her hand like evidence in a criminal trial. The universal language of deflection. "This isn't my fault, it's her fault." Martinez's expression remained flat as concrete throughout Dorothy's performance. I'd trained her well during our brief overlap years ago. Never react to the emotional theater. Document violations, explain requirements, issue citations. Everything else is just noise. Through Been There's windows, I watched Dorothy cycle through the complete stages of health inspection grief. Concerned business owner became defensive manager, became full-scale Karen demanding to speak to Martinez's supervisor in the space of about 6 minutes. 2 customers grabbed their coats and left during Dorothy's meltdown. Gerald finally removed his headphones and looked up, but made no move to intervene. Cowardice in action. Martinez handed Dorothy the official forms, violation notices, yellow copies, fine assessment paperwork. Dorothy snatched the documents and started reading, her expression transforming from anger to pure rage as she processed the financial impact. She wheeled on Patricia with fury that was visible even through closed windows and 40 feet of distance. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language told the whole story. Accusations, blame, public humiliation while customers fled, and the inspection team watched with professional detachment. The inspectors left with the same calm professionalism they'd displayed on arrival. They'd seen the show before. Guilty restaurant owners always followed the same script: deny, deflect, attack someone else. I finished my cappuccino, left cash on the table, and walked 3 blocks to my car. My hands were shaking as I turned the ignition key. Stage 1 complete. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Dad, I can only talk for a minute. Patricia's voice was strained, barely above a whisper. She's in the office counting money and I'm supposed to be cleaning tables. How bad was it? $2,500 fine. Written warning. They're coming back in 30 days for a follow-up inspection. A pause. Dad, she's blaming me for everything. Says I ruined the business through careless food handling. And Gerald won't defend me. Keeps saying he doesn't want to get involved in business disputes. Her voice cracked slightly. I think I'm in real trouble here. You did exactly what needed to be done. Stay strong. This is just the beginning. Before I could say more, I heard Dorothy's voice in the background. Who are you calling? Nobody. Just checking on supply deliveries. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for several minutes afterward. Patricia was scared, isolated, and trapped in a situation that was getting worse by the hour. But sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. My phone buzzed again. Text message from unknown number. Dad, she knows something. Don't know what, but she keeps staring at me and asking weird questions about who I've talked to lately. Be careful. An hour later, my landline rang. Dorothy's voice. Ice cold and professionally controlled. Wesley, this is Dorothy Foster. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. Dorothy, what can I do for you? Don't insult my intelligence by playing innocent. It's beneath both of us. I'm not sure what you're referring to. The health inspection. The Google review. The timing of everything. You think I'm stupid? My heart started pounding, but I kept my voice steady. Your cafe got inspected by the health department. That's unfortunate, but these things happen in the restaurant business. Philip Henderson, ring any bells? Silence. My mouth went dry. No? Interesting, because Philip Henderson doesn't exist. But his IP address does. Want to guess what address that review was posted from? More silence. We need to meet, face to face. Tonight. Or I go to the police tomorrow morning with evidence of harassment and business interference. Your choice. My apartment. 1 hour. Perfect. See you then, Wesley. She hung up, and I sat staring at my phone like it had just grown fangs. For the first time in 40 years of dealing with difficult restaurant owners, I felt genuine fear. Not abstract concern about professional consequences. Real, concrete fear about what came next. Dorothy had evidence. She had resources. She could frame this as stalking, harassment, intentional interference with business operations. The Google review was traceable proof that I'd targeted her establishment. What if I'd miscalculated? What if protecting Patricia meant destroying myself? I was 62 years old with no significant savings left, living on Social Security and a modest pension. One lawsuit could wipe out everything I had left, my apartment, my dignity, my relationship with my children. But then I thought about Patricia scrubbing bathroom floors while tears ran down her cheeks. I'd started this war. I wasn't going to lose it now. 20 minutes until Dorothy arrived at my apartment. I paced between the kitchen and living room, wearing a path in my cheap carpet while my mind raced through possible scenarios. She had evidence of the Google review, which meant she probably had evidence of more than that. Smart woman like Dorothy wouldn't come to a confrontation unless she was holding all the cards. I pulled out the partnership documents again and spread them across my coffee table. 51 pages of legal theft, but also 51 pages of evidence that Dorothy had planned this takeover weeks before ever approaching Patricia. The Oregon Secretary of State website showed Dorothy had filed LLC paperwork 3 weeks before the so-called partnership conversation. Premeditation was a beautiful thing when it worked in your favor. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. I'm parking. This conversation will take a while. The audacity was breathtaking. She was giving me orders in my own home. I didn't make coffee. Let her ask for hospitality after threatening me with police action. The knock came precisely 1 hour after her phone call. 3 firm raps, official and demanding. I opened the door to find Dorothy standing in my hallway wearing a cream-colored business suit and pearls, like she was attending a board meeting instead of an interrogation. Behind her stood a man in his 50s wearing an expensive gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He extended his hand with practiced professionalism. Mr. Patterson, I'm Richard Hayes, Miss Foster's attorney. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us tonight. so she'd brought legal backup. This was escalating faster than I'd anticipated. "Come in," I stepped aside, though agreeing to anything was the last thing on my mind. "You threatened me over the phone, Dorothy. I'm curious about your reasoning." Dorothy swept past me into my living room, her eyes scanning my apartment like she was conducting a property assessment. The lawyer followed, setting his briefcase on my coffee table with the same precision surgeons use when arranging instruments. She turned to face me, and her customer service smile disappeared completely. "Wesley, let's dispense with the games. I know you filed that health department complaint. I know you posted that fraudulent Google review. I know you're attempting to sabotage my business through coordinated harassment." "Your business?" I let those words hang in the air for a moment. Interesting choice of words. Yes, my business. The one I rescued from your daughter's financial incompetence. The one you're now trying to destroy through illegal interference. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen several times, then turned it toward me like she was presenting evidence in court. "Philip Henderson's Google review, posted from your home IP address at 11:47 p.m., 2 days before the health inspection. Care to explain that coincidence?" The lawyer opened his briefcase with theatrical efficiency, removing documents and arranging them on my coffee table like he was setting up a crime scene. The same table where I'd planned this entire campaign sat now covered with legal threats. "Mr. Patterson, you're looking at harassment charges, intentional interference with business operations, and defamation claims. Ms. Foster is prepared to file these complaints with the Portland Police Bureau tomorrow morning unless we can reach an alternative arrangement tonight." I laughed. Couldn't help myself. The situation was so absurd, being threatened with legal action in my own living room by the woman who'd stolen my daughter's business. Dorothy's eyes narrowed to cold slits. "You find criminal charges amusing? I find it amusing that you want to discuss illegal activity." I picked up the partnership documents from my end table and held them up. "Let's talk about fraud, coercion, and theft by deception, shall we? Those documents are completely legitimate." "Are they?" "Because public records show you filed LLC paperwork for Morning Brew Holdings 3 weeks before ever mentioning partnership to Patricia. That's called premeditation, Dorothy. You planned this theft before. You even approached my daughter." The lawyer glanced at Dorothy with obvious surprise. "Ms. Foster, you didn't mention prior business filings in our consultation, because they're irrelevant. He's fabricating evidence to deflect from his criminal harassment." "Public records," I said calmly. "Anyone can verify them through the Secretary of State website. I've already sent documentation to my son in Berlin and to several attorney contacts, just as insurance against anything unfortunate happening to me." The room went quiet, except for the sound of Portland traffic outside my windows. Dorothy stared at me with something approaching real hatred for the first time since I'd met her. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the display and her expression shifted from anger to confusion to alarm. "What? When did this happen? How many people are we talking about?" She listened intently while her face grew progressively paler. "I'll be there immediately." She hung up and looked at me with pure venom. "Someone has posted photographs on social media. The health inspection, the violation notices, the fine assessment. Portland Foodies group on Facebook. 12,000 members. They're systematically destroying our online reputation." I kept my face completely neutral, but inside I was thinking, Stage 2. I hadn't planned that particular development, but I'd accept any assistance the universe wanted to provide. Dorothy grabbed her purse with shaking hands. "This harassment campaign is going to cost you everything you own, Wesley. I promise you that." "Dorothy," I said as she headed for the door, "that Google review you're so upset about? That's going to be the least of your problems in the coming days. You started a war with someone who spent 35 years shutting down people who broke the rules and thought they were too smart to get caught. I'm just getting warmed up." She left with her lawyer scrambling to keep pace behind her. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart hammering against my ribs. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore, from anticipation. Stage 1 had been the health inspection. Stage 2 was apparently social media exposure, courtesy of some unknown ally. Both had rattled Dorothy's confidence and put her on the defensive. But the phone call I'd overheard in the hallway meant this war was about to get much more serious. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Dad, it wasn't me who posted those Facebook photos, but whoever did it deserves a medal. Dorothy is losing her mind. P. If it wasn't Patricia and it wasn't me, then someone else had joined this fight. Someone who understood exactly what was happening and had decided to take action." I opened my laptop and navigated to the Portland Foodies group on Facebook. The post had 847 shares in 3 hours, with comments pouring in faster than I could read them. I used to love Morning Brew until I witnessed how they treated their staff, never going back. That woman Dorothy screamed at a young employee for dropping a spoon. A spoon. Anyone know if the daughter-in-law is okay? She always seemed so sad when I went there. Public opinion was turning against Dorothy with the speed and fury of a forest fire. Good. Let her feel what it was like to be publicly humiliated while trying to work. But I knew Dorothy Foster wasn't the type to retreat when cornered. She was the type to escalate until someone got seriously hurt. Tomorrow would bring her counterattack, and I had no idea what form it would take. The apartment door closed behind Dorothy and her lawyer, leaving me standing in sudden silence that felt heavier than their threats. I walked to my kitchen window and watched their car disappear into Portland's evening traffic. Stage 1 had rattled her. Stage 2 was working better than I'd hoped, but Dorothy Foster wasn't retreating. She was regrouping for a counterattack. My phone rang within minutes. Unknown number again. Dad. Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. Can you come get me? Something's happened. What kind of something? Gerald and I just had the biggest fight of our marriage. He told me he's choosing his mother over me. Those were his exact words. I'm on my way. I found Patricia sitting on her front porch with a single suitcase like a refugee from her own life. Her eyes were red but determined, less broken than I'd seen her in months. What happened? I asked, loading her suitcase into my car. I heard Gerald on the phone with Dorothy. She was screaming about the Facebook post, demanding to know who was behind it. Gerald kept promising he'd handle the situation, that he'd make sure I stopped causing problems. Patricia's voice got stronger as she talked. Then Dorothy must have accused him of being weak because he said, I chose you over her. I'm with you. I've always been with you. What did you say to him? I told him to pack his things and get out. He tried to explain, but there's nothing to explain. When your husband chooses his mother over his wife, the marriage is over. We drove to my apartment in comfortable silence. Patricia had finally reached her breaking point, and anger was much more useful than despair. As we pulled into my parking lot, my phone chimed with an email notification. The address was unfamiliar, pdxfoodscene2047@gmail.com, but the subject line caught my attention immediately. Morning Brew situation. I opened it while Patricia carried her suitcase upstairs. Mr. Patterson, I'm guessing based on the timing and details. I received an anonymous message about Morning Brew Café and decided to investigate. I'm Helen Pierce, food blogger for Portland Scene. I remember Patricia from the early days, sweet girl who made incredible cinnamon rolls and always had a genuine smile for customers. I talked to several regular patrons today, and something is seriously wrong at that establishment. I'd like to hear Patricia's side of the story. My article publishes in 3 days. Helen, 3 days. I hadn't expected her to move this quickly, but good journalism often worked faster than legal proceedings. I responded immediately. Ms. Pierce, thank you for your interest. I can arrange a meeting with Patricia. She's ready to tell the truth, but we need discretion. The people exploiting her have significant resources and aren't above legal intimidation. Her reply came within minutes. Understood completely. This story matters. Portland supports its own small businesses and the people who make them special. Tell Patricia that someone has her back. I closed my laptop and looked at Patricia, who was making tea in my kitchen like she'd lived here for years instead of hours. There's a food blogger who wants to hear your story, I said. Article goes live in 3 days. Are you ready to go public? Will it help save the cafe? It'll make that health inspection look like a parking ticket. She almost smiled. For the first time in weeks, Patricia looked like she was ready to fight back instead of just survive. The next morning brought developments I hadn't anticipated. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. with unknown numbers. Food bloggers, local business reporters, people who'd seen the Facebook post and wanted more information about Morning Brew's situation. By 8 a.m., the Portland Foodies group post had 1,400 shares and counting. Comments were brutal, creative, and absolutely devastating to Dorothy's reputation. I witnessed the owner screaming at her daughter-in-law for accidentally dropping a coffee stirrer. Who does that? This explains why the atmosphere there changed so much over the past few months. That poor girl always looked miserable. Anyone know how we can support Patricia directly? She deserves better than this abuse. Someone had created a hashtag #SavePatricia, and it was spreading across Portland's tight-knit food community faster than I could track. Around noon, Patricia's phone buzzed with a text from Gerald. "I'm sorry for everything. Tell your father he won. Mom and I are leaving Portland. Don't try to find us." Just like that, Dorothy was cutting her losses and running. But running from what, exactly? A health inspection fine and some bad publicity shouldn't be enough to make someone flee the state. Unless there was more to hide than I'd realized. I called Nancy Rodriguez, the business attorney who'd helped me understand the partnership documents. We needed legal action to prevent Dorothy from liquidating assets or transferring ownership before disappearing completely. "Mr. Patterson, if they're planning to leave the state, we need to move fast. I can file for an emergency restraining order preventing Dorothy from accessing business accounts or making major decisions without Patricia's consent. How long will that take? If we file today, I can get a hearing scheduled for Friday. But Wesley, if Dorothy's really planning to flee, she might try to clean out whatever cash assets she can access first." "You mean the cafe's operating funds?" "Exactly. Cash, register receipts, petty cash. Any liquid assets that don't require paperwork to transfer." Patricia overheard the conversation and went pale. "Dad, she has keys to everything. She could take all the money we've earned this month." I looked at my watch. 2:15 p.m. Morning Brew would stay open until 6 p.m., with Dorothy probably planning her exit strategy while counting the day's receipts. "Nancy, file that emergency order immediately. Patricia, we're going to the cafe." "Why? What can we do?" "We're going to make sure Dorothy doesn't steal anything else on her way out of town." The drive across Portland felt like preparation for battle. Patricia sat quietly in the passenger seat, but I could see her hands clenched in her lap. 3 months ago, she'd been excited about running her own business. Today, she was about to confront the woman who'd stolen her dream and destroyed her marriage. "Dad, what if she refuses to give me access to my own cafe?" Then we call the police and show them the partnership documents. "Dorothy might own 51%, but you still own 49%. She can't legally exclude you from the premises. What if she's already taken the money?" Then we document the theft and add it to the list of charges Nancy's preparing. As we pulled into Morning Brew's parking lot, I noticed Dorothy's car was still there, but the cafe's open sign was dark, even though it was only 4:30 p.m. Through the front windows, I could see Dorothy moving around inside, but the door was locked. "She's closed early," Patricia said. "She's cleaning out the register." I pulled out my phone and started recording video. Then we're about to catch her in the act. I knocked firmly on the locked glass door while keeping my phone camera recording. Dorothy looked up from behind the counter, her face cycling through surprise, annoyance, and calculation in the space of 3 seconds. "We're closed," she called through the glass, not moving toward the door. "Patricia owns 49% of this business," I called back. "She has legal right of access during business hours." Dorothy's jaw tightened, but she walked over and unlocked the door. "What do you want, Wesley? I want to make sure all business assets are properly accounted for before anyone makes any traveling plans." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, but it was enough to confirm that Gerald's text had been accurate. They were definitely planning to leave Portland. Patricia stepped forward with more confidence than I'd seen from her in months. "Dorothy, I need to check the daily receipts and cash register totals. That's not necessary. Gerald handles all the financial reporting. Gerald doesn't work here. I do. This is my cafe, and I'm checking my own books." Dorothy's customer service smile was slipping. "Patricia, dear, you're obviously upset about your marital problems, but that doesn't give you the right to disrupt normal business operations." "Show me the register," Patricia said firmly. I kept my phone camera running as Dorothy reluctantly stepped aside to let Patricia access the cash register. When Patricia opened it, her face went white. "Dad, it's empty. The entire day's receipts are gone. How much should be there?" I asked, still recording. "Based on the customers I saw this morning, at least $400, maybe more." Dorothy waved one hand dismissively. "I made a deposit run to the bank, standard security procedure." "Which bank?" Patricia asked. "And where's the deposit receipt?" Silence. "Dorothy," I said, keeping my voice calm and legal sounding for the recording. "Patricia needs to see documentation of any business transactions involving cafe funds. I don't have to show you anything. You're not even an owner here." "But I am," Patricia said. "And I'm asking to see the bank deposit receipt for today's transaction." More silence. Dorothy's face was getting red around the edges. "The receipt is in Gerald's car. He handled the deposit." Call Gerald and ask him to bring it back. He's busy with client work. Then call the bank and get a transaction confirmation. Dorothy's composure finally cracked. I don't have to justify standard business practices to someone who can't even keep her own marriage together. That was the wrong thing to say to Patricia at the wrong moment. You're stealing from me, Patricia said, her voice getting stronger with each word. You've been stealing from me for months. The tips, the daily receipts, probably the weekly deposits too. This stops now. You ungrateful little girl, I saved this business when you were about to lose everything through your own incompetence. You stole this business. There's a difference. I stepped forward. Dorothy, I'm going to call the Portland police and report theft of business assets, unless you can produce documentation for today's transactions right now. Her eyes went cold and calculating. For a moment, I thought she might actually call my bluff and dare me to involve the police. Instead, she grabbed her purse from behind the counter and pulled out a thick envelope. Fine. Here's your precious money, every penny that was in that register today. She threw the envelope on the counter hard enough to make coins scatter across the surface. Patricia opened it and counted quickly. This is only $180. There should be at least $400. That's all there was. Dorothy, I've worked here every day for 3 months. I know what our daily revenue looks like. Then maybe you should have been paying better attention to portion control and waste management. I kept recording while Patricia recounted the money twice. Her face was getting angrier with each count. Dad, she's stolen over $200 just today, and that's assuming this is actually all the money that was in the register. Dorothy, I said, stealing from a business you partially own is still embezzlement under Oregon law. Prove it. Prove I took anything that wasn't rightfully mine under the partnership agreement. The partnership agreement doesn't give you authority to steal cash receipts. It gives me authority to manage business operations, including deposits and financial security. This was going nowhere productive. Dorothy was too smart to admit theft while being recorded, and we didn't have enough documentation to prove exactly how much money should have been in the register. But I had a different card to play. Patricia, we should probably get going. Helen Pierce wants to meet with you this evening to discuss the article she's writing about Morning Brew. Dorothy's face went white. What article? Portland food blogger. She's doing a piece about family business dynamics and workplace exploitation. Should be very interesting reading. If you publish lies about me, I'll sue you for everything you own. Truth isn't defamation, Dorothy. And the truth is that you've systematically stolen from and humiliated my daughter for months while stealing her business. I saved this business. You destroyed it. Look around. Half your customers have left. You've got health department violations. Your online reputation is ruined. And now you're literally stealing from the register while planning to flee the state. Dorothy grabbed a second purse from behind the counter, one I hadn't noticed before, and headed for the door. This conversation is over, and so is this business relationship. Patricia, you can have your little cafe back. See how long it lasts without someone who actually understands business management. Where are you going? Patricia called after her. That's none of your concern anymore. She pushed past us toward the exit, then stopped and turned back. Patricia, you have no idea how to run a business, no understanding of profit margins or customer service or financial planning. This place will fail within 6 months, and when it does, don't come crying to me or Gerald for help. I won't need help from people who steal from family. Dorothy's laugh was bitter and sharp. Family? You were never family. You were a business opportunity that didn't work out. She left without looking back, and I watched her car disappear into Portland traffic for what I hoped would be the last time. Patricia locked the door behind her and turned to survey her cafe, really hers now for the first time in months. Dad, what do I do now? She's right about one thing. I don't know if I can make this work alone. You're not alone, and you're stronger than you realize. My phone buzzed with a text from Helen Pierce. Can we meet tonight? I'd like Patricia to tell her story before Dorothy has time to create a counter-narrative. Patricia, your interview starts in 2 hours. Ready to tell Portland what really happened here? She looked around at her cafe, empty, damaged, but finally free, and smiled. I'm ready. Helen Pierce arrived at my apartment that evening with the energy of someone who'd uncovered a major story. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with short blonde hair and the kind of intense focus that good journalists develop when they smell injustice. Patricia, I remember you from the early days of Morning Brew. You had this genuine warmth that made customers feel welcome. What happened to that feeling? Patricia sat on my couch, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, and told her story. Not just the partnership fraud and daily humiliation, but the gradual erosion of her confidence, the way Dorothy had systematically isolated her from customers and decision-making, the marriage that had crumbled under external pressure. Helen took notes by hand, old-school journalist style. How long did this exploitation continue before your father intervened? 3 months. 3 months of scrubbing floors while she collected my tips and made all the business decisions. I felt like a prisoner in my own cafe. And the health inspection that resulted in violations and a fine? Patricia looked at me. We'd agreed to be honest about everything. My father used his professional expertise to ensure that Dorothy's corner-cutting and safety violations were properly documented by the authorities. She'd created those problems. Dad just made sure they were visible. So justice was served through proper channels, using legitimate health department procedures? Exactly. Helen finished writing and closed her notebook. This story needs to be told. Small business owners deserve protection from predators who exploit family relationships for financial gain. Her article went live at 6 a.m. the next morning. By 7 a.m., it had 500 shares on social media. By noon, 2,000. Portland's food community rallied around Patricia with the speed and intensity that only happens when people recognize genuine injustice. The Dark Side of Morning Brew, How Financial Predators Exploit Family Businesses, told Patricia's complete story, including Dorothy's systematic theft and the partnership documents that had stolen controlling interest in Patricia's own cafe. The community response was immediate and overwhelming. 3 food suppliers called, offering extended credit terms. A local coffee roaster delivered 50 pounds of premium beans with a note. For Patricia, Portland supports its own. An electrician showed up unannounced to fix wiring problems free of charge. 2 days later, Nancy Rodriguez called with legal updates. Wesley, we've got good news and better news. Good news is that Dorothy never showed up for the emergency hearing, so the judge granted Patricia full operational control of Morning Brew. Better news is that Dorothy's flight to Las Vegas was tracked by credit card records. Las Vegas? Why there? Probably thought she could gamble her way out of her financial problems. Bad decision. Nevada authorities have been very cooperative about tracking her activities. Within a week, Portland police had issued warrants for Dorothy's arrest on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and theft. Gerald's car was found at Portland International Airport with a note confessing his role in the partnership scam and asking Patricia to forgive him. But the real victory came 2 weeks later, when Patricia reopened Morning Brew under her sole ownership. The line of customers stretched around the block. Local news covered the reopening. Food bloggers documented every detail. The Portland Foodies group organized a celebration party that raised $3,000 for operational expenses. Kenneth flew in from Berlin for the grand reopening, bringing German chocolates and European coffee equipment as gifts. Patricia cried when she saw him, but these were tears of joy rather than despair. "Dad," she said during the celebration, "I can't believe how many people showed up to support us." "Portland takes care of its own," I replied, watching customers enjoy her cinnamon rolls and genuine smile. "You just needed to remember who you really are." 6 months later, Morning Brew was thriving beyond anything we'd imagined possible. Patricia had hired 2 part-time employees and was considering expansion to catering services. Her confidence had returned along with her customer base. Dorothy was eventually arrested in Las Vegas after losing her remaining money at casino tables. She received 18 months in county jail plus restitution payments to Patricia. Gerald divorced her and moved to Seattle, sending monthly support payments without explanation or requests for forgiveness. The partnership documents that had nearly destroyed Patricia's life became evidence in a fraud case that helped other small business owners recognize and avoid similar scams. 1 year after Dorothy's arrest, I sat at my usual corner table in Morning Brew, reading The Oregonian and drinking properly prepared coffee. Patricia moved behind the counter with the easy confidence of someone who owned her space completely. Customers lined up not just for her excellent coffee and baking, but for the genuine warmth that had returned to her personality. "Dad, your usual cinnamon roll?" she called over. "Always," I replied. A food blogger approached my table. Not Helen Pierce, but someone new who'd heard about Patricia's story. "Excuse me, are you Wesley Patterson, the health inspector who helped expose the Morning Brew fraud?" "I'm Patricia's father," I said. "The health department exposed the fraud. I just made sure they had accurate information to work with. People are calling you a hero for protecting your daughter." I looked across the cafe at Patricia, laughing with customers while she prepared their orders, completely in control of her own business and life. Heroes don't exist, I told the blogger. Just stubborn fathers who refuse to let bullies win. Dad, Patricia called from behind the counter. Order up. Your cinnamon roll is ready. I walked over to collect my pastry, same routine we'd developed over the past year. She handed it to me with a smile that had been missing for too many months. Perfect, I said after taking a bite. Just like everything else you do. That smile, right there in her own cafe, surrounded by customers who genuinely cared about her success, that was victory. Not the legal judgments, or Dorothy's jail sentence, or the money Patricia had recovered. Just my daughter being happy while doing work she loved. I'm 62 years old, my retirement savings are gone, my daughter went through a divorce and nearly lost her business to a predatory criminal. But she's free, she's strong, she survived what tried to break her. And Dorothy Foster learned that stealing from the wrong family has consequences that last much longer than 18 months in county jail. Morning Brew is Patricia's now, completely and forever. No one can take that away. That's enough victory for any father.